You said you take 25 supplements in the morning. This might be able to replace that. So when you go to a mall, it's not necessarily about just the product that you get, it's the experience that surrounds.
I mean, that's the broader idea, right? Like, obviously, sometimes you just duck in the mall to buy something, but the broader trend in retail today is a diversification from pure retail, where shopping malls used to kind of do a tenant mix on like an 80% retail, 20% like entertainment, F&B break. Now that's shifting, like future forward format, let's say, to a 50-50 model.
Why are we seeing that shift?
We're seeing that shift because
neurotransmitters, which are things that process information. We have more neurotransmitters within our gut than we do in both our brain and spinal cord combined. If we manage to educate people on gut health, then people naturally will be able to make more informed decisions and then indirectly buy products that benefit their gut health.
So the idea is that obviously we're going to look at kind of 3-4 cities that we've identified, and we're going to move into those cities, looking at like very like marquee locations in those cities, understanding that like our formula of like a landlord providing this incentive for us to be there has to exist in probably 1 out of the 3 or 2 out of the 3.
Yeah.
So when you put together the package for financing, you kind of have this diversified CapEx contribution from the landlord, kind of debt packages at the venue level, and then we make a balance sheet investment. Maybe there's some like underwriting of tech hardware financing, et cetera. But basically we look at that kind of spectrum of financing and we choose the locations, and that's...
Why when you started HyperSpace, why did you choose Dubai instead of, there's maybe some other more obvious options like the US, bigger market, potentially?
Yeah, no, of course.
Why Dubai?
Like Dubai's a really... it was always an interesting city for me for like various reasons. I think that when you look at the market dynamics in Dubai, a city that was built very quickly. So really Dubai is a story from the 1990 onward. Yeah. And now you walk around Dubai, it's an absolute metropolis. It's just like kind of, unquantifiable how this, happened so quickly. But really, what I believe the entrepreneurial opportunity here exists because when you build something so quickly, you leave these kind of market gaps for private sector to basically come in. And so you normally think that sort of market gap will be something small, like you invest in a paddle court business. Yeah. So it's like, there's an opportunity to build paddle courts and to do a kind of wellness club around that, or there's an opportunity to build like a matcha cafe, or there's an opportunity to do a jet ski rental, whatever it is. You're thinking kind of like, here are the market gaps that like are like low hanging fruit for private sector. What was really interesting for me when I kind of uncovered the entertainment opportunity for Dubai, you realize that, Dubai focuses so much on driving tourism, and they've built, all the kind of components that drive quality tourism, a great airline, great hotels, kind of like high level kind of activities to do, going to the beach, top of the Burj Khalifa, all these kind of, let's call it like typical large format tourist activities, Dubai Parks and Resorts, Desert Safari. But what they missed probably, or I wouldn't say what they missed, the market that we found was this new format entertainment market. And as we kind of peeled back the layers, we realized that Dubai was kind of like the perfect city to build that business in. So for a few reasons. Number one, you have, there's a big kind of future of retail conversation that's been happening for the last, say, 8-9 years.
Somewhat declining.
Yeah, right? Somewhat declining. It's kind of like e-commerce is beating physical retail globally. Optionality on the customer experience is just better on e-commerce, right? So like, what does physical retail turn into? It turns into an experience, right? It's like, I want to go to the mall because it's a fun thing to do. But it can't just be like, I'm just going to go to the shops because shopping is better online. Like, I get a better shopping experience on Unos than I do walking around Dubai Mall, right? Yeah. Just from a selection perspective, from what an algorithm feeds me.
And you can end up spending 5 hours in Dubai Mall without,
Exactly.
getting what you want.
So like, what's the draw for like global retail today? It's like the experience. It's like, I go to the mall, I go grab a coffee at a coffee shop, I go have lunch, I take a walk around, I go to the shops, I go consume entertainment. There's like, the offering is kind of diversified.
So when you go to a mall, it's not necessarily about just the product that you get, it's the experience that surrounds.
I mean, that's the broader idea, right? Like, obviously sometimes you just duck in the mall to buy something, but the broader trend in retail today is a diversification from pure retail. And so where shopping malls used to kind of do a tenant mix on like an 80% retail, 20% like entertainment F&B break. Now that's shifting like in a future forward format, let's say, to a 50-50 model. And there's some shopping malls, like say American Dream Mall in New Jersey, where 70% of the mall is dedicated to entertainment and 30% is shopping. And so,
and why are we seeing that shift?
We're seeing that shift because, you know, the consumer cares more about experience, which exists more in the retail stores, obviously.
Yeah.
But these malls and retail developments are really kind of things to do activity category.
Because if people just want to buy something, they can just order it online.
Exactly. And so basically, like, you're trying to engage in the experience economy. And the experience can be, I'm buying a shirt in a store, but it can be many other things. And so, you know, what was really interesting about Dubai, to go back to your original question, when you look at a shopping mall in, say, like, I don't know, St. Louis or Chicago or wherever, that shopping mall has an existential issue. Like, that shopping mall might very well be turned into like a data center. Like, there is this kind of potential for a binary outcome. Like, it could just not exist anymore because the trends go in the other direction. What was interesting in Dubai is you have kind of two forces in that future of retail space that are interesting. So you have the shopping mall really being the fabric of like community and kind of, say, the urban ecosystem here. Yeah. And so, like, Dubai Mall isn't going anywhere. It's just going to change. And then what you have in Dubai is you have this kind of desire to continually be a first mover. And I think that's really where we found the interesting opportunity. And obviously, when you're starting a business, at the outset, it's about, like, who's willing to kind of take interest in you. Mm-hmm. And so we went to all the mall developers on day one of the business with these kind of dummy brands. I can give you the whole story behind that. But the reception towards building future-forward entertainment inside shopping malls was of extreme interest, and mall owners and kind of, you know, managers and C-suites of these mall developers knew that this was the direction the shopping mall was going in, and they needed to be proactive to continue to garner the customer. And so we were just met with a lot of acceptance and a lot of opportunity more than anything else. You want me to tell you the story about how kind of that got going? It's an interesting one. Yeah. So basically, there was a lot of hypotheses around the kind of starting of HyperSpace. You know, we're looking at future of retail, we're looking at the future of entertainment, and kind of entertainment meets consumerism. You know, a lot of it was very social media driven. So it's like, how does where do social media and entertainment intersect? You know, what makes someone want to consume entertainment because it enhances their social media experience, or it shows them in their digital identity in a certain life. Like, I look great in this picture.
I mean, there are some people that consume entertainment purely for the social media element.
Exactly. And then, you know, further from that, like, then your customer becomes your marketeer. Like at Aya, 60% of our customers are acquired through user-generated content.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. Wow. So, like, we're basically as good as the amount of tickets we sell the day before, because that's what drives our audience. The majority of our audience every day is our customer posting. But the average Aya customer posts 5 or more Instagram pieces of content basically online, which is a lot. Yeah. And so it's very social media driven. So we looked at all these kind of ideas around this space, and I said, this is really rooted in the future of the mall, because you need to have a problem and a solution. And I had this big, clunky, old world industry that needed a solution, especially looking at, like, say, department store closures, retailers wanting to scale back to smaller venues. And so what you had at the time in 2018, 19, 20 in a lot of shopping malls was big, empty units. So where it was easier for them to fill 5,000 to 10,000 square foot units, you always had like a 70 or 60 or 50,000 square foot unit sitting empty. And so we came in as the kind of the proposition as the future anchor tenant. And so what I did is I went to a bunch of the different creative agencies in New York. I interviewed 3 of them. I said, I need you to create 2 dummy brands for me, because I need to kind of test this hypothesis, see if the retail developers are really serious about kind of backing projects like this and integrating them into their malls. And so I developed 2 brands with them, kind of, you know, with renders and kind of customer journey, 200-page books. One was the Museum of Sneakers and one was the Museum of Beauty. No intention of ever building either of these brands. Yeah. This was just simply to, like, test it with the market. And so I went to MR, Alpha Tame, MAF, a few Wafi, a few of the other retail developers, and I pitched them this business. And I said, listen, you know, it costs about $12 million to build a venue, 30,000 square feet. We were just using numbers at the time. We hadn't really done mega market studies, and everything that we've built was either much bigger or more expensive. And I said, you know, $12 million to build a venue. I said, I have 6, which I didn't have at the time, but it was just, you know, I have 6 ready to go. So would you guys put in 6? And every one of them came back with a term sheet.
Wow.
And they were all like, yes, we would definitely do a large CapEx contribution to fill that large venue.
But then you shifted the pitch from, the sneaker place to Aya.
Well, basically what happened was, I had all this interest across these various brands. I actually had more interest than I had fake brands.
Yeah.
And so I decided, so I had one mall that really wanted to do Museum of Sneakers, which was then turned into House of Hype.
Yeah.
Now it's at Dubai Mall, as we know. And the other mall that I engaged in, Wafi, the son of the owner of Wafi Mall, Sheikh Ahmed, he had just been to Team Lab in, I think, fall of 2019. And he was like, yeah, I love this whole category, but like that thing really blew my mind. Like, what if we built something in like the digital immersive space? And I was like, that's, this point it's just me. So I'm like, yeah, we can do anything. Why not? Like, I'm just kind of rolling dice here. And so I called up one of the agencies that I didn't work with because they were the most expensive bid by far. And I said to them, listen, I have this opportunity. They're willing to put in substantial capital to help fund this venue. I want to hire your agency to help me develop the idea. And this is one of the leading agencies in the world, probably the best experienced design team in the world. And I called up the head of the group, and she said to me, this is really cool. Like, let's dig into this a little bit more. And over the next 2 weeks, they dug into it more and more until she picked up the phone and called me and said, what if I quit my job and start this with you? And I was like, wait, this is like, I have her and one other person, Rama and Desi.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And, they're like the industry leaders. Like, they're working with Nike and Google and Meta and Spotify, and like the biggest brands in the world, the biggest budgets, doing these mega activations for them, like designing the future of the Nike store and designing, Instagram filters for Instagram and, working on, like skunk work projects for Meta and Magic Leap and you name it. And like these guys are like the industry leaders, like teams of, hundreds that work for them across 4 offices around the world. And they're like, well, we're happy to quit our jobs and bring 10 people with us from New York to come and start this company. And I was like, what are you talking about?
So
and
that's where it all...
That's how it really started, was like, and I appreciated it at the time. Like in retrospect, you're like, this company doesn't exist if those 2 people don't take that crazy leap.
Wow.
And so, then we got going. And then it was like, I was sitting there, we didn't have an office. It was just me. I was like living in some illusion of grandeur, being like, this is going to be a major business. And we got all this interest and all this enthusiasm. And then everyone showed up, and it went from a guy with an idea to 2 industry leaders who had no business quitting their jobs and moving to Dubai to do a startup. And what was it? They brought 5 people with them from their team, and then we hired a couple other people here as support. And so it was 1 to 11 on day 1, and it's like, we're going to go build the future of entertainment in Dubai. And then it's just like rocket ship. And then It just kind of gets going, and, you kind of blink and you have one of the greatest teams in the world sitting right in front of you on day 1, ready to build this business with you. And they're sitting in Dubai because they have high conviction in the future of retail and it potentially being here and building a company from here. And,
And how were you at that time? Obviously, when you were pitching to investors, how did you define Aya or HyperSpace? Because still, like, every time someone asks me, I obviously went to House of Hype in Dubai Mall. Phenomenal job, what you guys have done. 100,000 square foot space. Really, really incredible. It's one of those things that you can't quite describe, in my opinion. You just have to experience, because it's so multifaceted and it's just such a sensory overload. But when people ask me, what is HyperSpace? What's House of Hype? I give a different definition every time.
Sure, of course.
How would you define it, and how are you defining it to the initial investors before there was any product?
It's a great question. How you pitch something at the beginning and how you kind of talk about it in actuality tend to often be very different things.
Yeah.
So, one of my kind of, let's say, challenges or things that I felt like I had to address in 2021 when we really started the business, which was like January 2021, everyone moves to Dubai and we get going. So just over 4 years ago, the venture world and the world of investors, they all want to invest in tech. they're like looking at renders of this big, expensive, physical, capex heavy thing, and that's the feedback is this looks really expensive, and so they're trying to see some upside. So immediately shift your pitch to like this kind of physical meets digital business.
Yeah,
and
then the reactions shifted.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
They're like, oh, like this is kind of like a physical tech play, and like you kind of start drinking your own Kool-Aid, and it was very funny because it came like at the same moment as like the NFT heat wave.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, and like, there's like physical place, but you create digital assets and all this sort of stuff. And so you start kind of getting into this like kind of physical space for the new format of entertainment consumerism, where people come to consume the real life way, the way that they play video games and, create content in the digital world.
And to be honest, I think that's a fairly accurate description.
It's a fairly accurate. It's a solid description in terms of like what the experience might feel like to certain customers, or probably maybe to majority of customers.
Yeah.
But what you end up building is a consumer product.
Yeah.
And so what you end up realizing is that the power of selling a ticket and the demand for that ticket sale is a gargantuan business in its own right.
Yeah.
And so you start shifting away from these things that are a bit more kind of like dice rolls. Like we're building into the future of smart space. And it's like, no, just selling 500,000 tickets a year at Aya is a crazy business with like 70% margins on a physical space business, which is like unheard of.
Yeah.
And so then you start really thinking about like, what is it about this consumer product that drives that sort of consumption? And so then you start playing into the market. Like obviously like our market here is extraordinary for that. You have the #1 tourist spending audience in the world. It's I think $31 billion of tourist spending a year on 19 million tourists.
Wow.
Just to put that into perspective, it's #1 in the world by almost double. But the #2 is Mecca at 19. Then you have like a city like Paris, for example, which I think is #3, 23 million tourists a year spending 13 billion. So
wow.
like so Dubai is 2.5x that. And they have actually less tourists, like 15% less tourists. London, New York, all kind of same bracket as Paris, like 14, 15 billion sort of range, kind of all like 21 to 24 million tourists a year. So international tourists. And so, you look at that sort of market dynamic and it's just fascinating here. And then when you think about consumer products, like what are we building for? We're building for Instagram pictures. We're building for fun with friends. We're building for this kind of like, experience that kind of takes you away from the mundane into this beautiful place.
100%.
And, there's a lot of ideas around joy economy, experience economy. Like people crave this sort of stuff. And so you start kind of focusing on what the consumer really wants. But you get that from obviously a reaction from your customer, and you start looking at where the money moves. And the money moves through tickets. And the consumer base for what we're doing just continues to grow, and interest continues to grow. And so you asked me kind of what's the shift in pitch yesterday and today. Yesterday, it's obviously you're trying to fit into someone else's narrative, and today you just build your own.
Nice. I mean, and from my perspective at least, or from a consumer perspective, I think you guys have, when you mentioned the bridging the physical reality to, virtual reality or a digital world, I think HyperSpace has really, managed to achieve that, because when you look at, let's say, digital world, for me, I think of gaming. As a kid,
sure.
I was obsessed with Pokemon or FIFA or whatever it is, and games are in essence a simulation of an experience
100%.
that's not real. You're playing FIFA. You're playing football, but none of that is real. And the cool thing about HyperSpace is it's these sort of experiences that are kind of real, because
sure.
you're there in the physical form, experiencing all these things.
Well, why don't I flip the question on to you? You invested in our Series A round.
Yes.
And Marcel, your business partner, invested in our seed round.
Yep.
Why did you guys invest? What was the kind of enthusiasm? What did you guys see?
To be honest, what we saw was first of its kind experience that was, we really saw the vision that, you were trying to portray, which to be honest was quite difficult, because I remember also, looking at the pitch deck or sitting in your office. We were looking at these renders that are somewhat pixelated, but in the end of the day, we wanted to be a part of something that was being pioneered in Dubai, and something that really bridged the physical and the digital world in a way in which is accessible for everyone. And we also believed very much in the idea that, or not believed, but we knew that retail space was somewhat in the decline. It was a sector that was experiencing challenges, and when you explained everything, there really are few ways in which to better enhance that experience. Like imagine a family going to Wafi Mall or Dubai Mall to get their errands done, and then they can fit in Aya as an experience for like an hour or two, or House of Hype. So yeah, those were the main reasons. And
I remember you guys coming into our office, and I think we kind of gave you guys the rundown of what we'd been working on,
yeah,
and what we were looking at doing in this new round, etc. And I remember you and Marcel walking out of the office and like high-fiving each other, and like you had all this enthusiasm, and Desi turned to me and he's like, I think he's pretty excited about the business. I just remember that moment because, you don't normally have two young guys coming in and just kind of like being like boisterous and excited about investing in a company,
yeah,
which I always remember that. But you also came to Dubai and started a business here and started a few businesses here. Like, what was the reason that you decided to kind of uproot your life and move here and kind of be an entrepreneur here?
To be honest, when I first moved to Dubai, I moved here as more of a means to an end. I didn't perceive, obviously Dubai is now a phenomenal place, and it has been an incredible place. But my perception of Dubai was that it's an area, a place where it's very business friendly. The bureaucracy is easy. It's a good place to launch a business. I wanted to, in the beginning, together with Marcel, he's my business partner, and we're partnered up in every business that we're involved in. We wanted to launch a food brand that was Africa focused, because for us, geographically, Africa is the single continent that economically was the furthest behind, or is the furthest behind, but it most definitely has the potential to catch up with the rest of the world. Demographically, you have 2/3 of the population below the age of 35. So that means people are, active in the consumer market, and people are open to trying new brands. And Marcel and I, we have a background in fast-moving consumer goods. It's something that we've always been interested in since childhood. And so we decided to launch that, Africa-focused food brand. And Dubai was, for us, the most livable place across Middle East and Africa. Because also the food brand wasn't just going to be Africa-focused. It was also Middle East and Africa-focused. And from that geography, Dubai was our favorite place to live. And soon after, having spent time here, you get to meet people here, and that was actually one of my complaints when I first moved to Dubai. My main complaint was I felt that I wasn't meeting the same caliber of people that I was meeting when I was out and about in London and New York.
Fair.
Or Paris, or these other major cities. And what I love about Dubai now are the people that I'm meeting. 100%. Almost every week that I go out, I meet people that I look up to, that I respect, that I want to hang out with, that I want to spend time with. Really, really interesting people. And for me, Dubai has entirely shifted from a place that I viewed as a means to an end, where I was like, okay, I'll come here, I'll set a business up, I'll get things going, and then once things are up and running, I'll go back to London or Istanbul. It's now shifted to a place where I'm like, okay, things are in the process of, getting up and running. But even if they were up and running, I wouldn't want to leave Dubai.
Yeah, I agree.
Like this place has everything to offer. If you, whatever metric you can use to define a great city. From now, the people, something that, I also complained about when I first moved here was this, lack of nature in the city, which, to be honest, I've mitigated that concern entirely with the fact that, one, I do travel relatively often. And, if I want to see greenery, this and that, I do see that when I travel. But when I don't, I like the fact that the nature, because there is nature, on the weekends, every weekend, almost every weekend, we go to the beach in London or in Istanbul or in Paris. That's an element of nature that you don't get to experience. So, and it's not just the beach. It's you can go to the sand dunes. If you go at sunset time, you feel like you're on Mars. So all these, let's say not minor, but these areas that I would complain about the city, they've all entirely diminished.
That's great.
And on the business front, what's really incredible is the speed at which things move here, particularly relative to other cities.
You're right about that. I think. Sorry, go ahead.
And just to add to that, it's not just how fast the things move, but it's the people who are in business also in the city. So, for example, when I wanted to launch this podcast, I called initially only people that I knew or my friends who are based in Dubai to see who is interested to join the podcast. I called 8 people, thinking maybe only 2 or 3 would agree, and that'll be a good starting point. I called 8 people, and all 8 said yes. I'm very happy to join this podcast. And to me, that is another very clear indicator about the people in the city being so open and encouraging to help, support, and be part of a growth journey. And I have no doubt, sadly, if I had the same conversation, with friends or people in other cities, that I wouldn't have that high of a hit rate. People go out of their way here with no tangible benefit to themselves to help friends and people in their ecosystem.
That's a really good point. I agree with that completely. And I think, one thing that always strikes me about Dubai, which I really enjoy, is, we're like the young ones here. Like, Dubai is really a city for like 40, 50-year-olds, ultimately. Yeah. Like, we're in London, we're in New York, et cetera. We're kind of, I'm 33, you're
29.
29. You're 29. I was going to say 30, but 29. So
Almost.
You're 29. Like, we're kind of in the young generation in Dubai of people that moved here. Obviously, there's Emiratis here and people more from the region, but of the young kind of expat community, we're the young ones, and a lot of other people that are in their kind of 40s, 50s, et cetera, they moved here for a specific reason. They moved here for a tax benefit. They moved here because they had success somewhere else and wanted to come and live here. Afterwards, they moved here because they saw opportunity here and wanted to start businesses here, because that's really normally the demographic of people that are starting businesses. They're not in their 20s or early 30s, and I don't know if you would dissuade young people from starting businesses, but I would definitely say it's a lot harder when you're younger.
Yeah,
and your
for
probability of getting it right is much higher if you're a bit older and a bit more experienced. And so when you talk about being part of a community of people where you learn so much and you're around really interesting people, and your ability to just kind of like exchange with really, like, let's say, accomplished individuals on just a kind of fun, social, non-business level, but also be a bit of a sieve and just kind of take it in and learn. Dubai might be the greatest city in the world for that, because people are just very open here. People are very friendly. People have their guards generally down, and they're here to kind of live this dynamic life between a social life and a business life. And in a lot of other cities, like in London and New York, those dynamics don't exist, partly because they're big cities too. Dubai's a bit of a village when it comes to kind of what we spend our times doing and the sorts of people we see. We all kind of go to the same places. Yeah. And you end up meeting a lot of, fun people in that sense. And it is kind of just quite fun and relaxed in that way. It's not too kind of buttoned up and businessy. I think that Dubai is a very casual kind of, let's say, social environment that sometimes can kind of flow into work, and people that come here with the right attitude, they're able to kind of meet extraordinary people and build really interesting things and kind of use it as a real kind of launch pad to the next phase of their lives.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there are just so many examples. I was going to say there's so many examples of it, because the probability of success in this city, in my opinion, is significantly higher than probability of success in other cities. And
of course,
even if you're, growing a business or building a business, and your growth rate specifically isn't tremendously high, once you've built it, even if you maintain the same, let's say, market share, and you're not growing, the city itself is growing so much let's say the spending power, the population, that even if you maintain, you are naturally growing together with the city.
You're 100%. You know, we were just talking about it before. Like population growth in the UAE this year was 21%, and 70% of that was in Dubai. So you basically went from a city of 3.8 million people to I think about 5 million people or 4.9 million people in a year. That's why there's traffic outside, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you had an increase in tourism of about 3%. So it's about 15% up year-on-year tourism. So, I mean, that's just wild growth. And those people that are not, you know, coming at kind of all ends of society. They're coming mostly at kind of the, you know, top of society, you know, in comparison to other cities. For example, you know, the UK, I think London had population growth of 25,000 people last year, and Dubai had population growth of like 1.15 million.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
but London also has a massive net outflow of, you know, let's say
100%. But I mean, that's like just, you know, every city's growth. Yeah. Like macroeconomics say every city grows every year.
Yeah.
But to have such little growth and to have so much growth, it's such a fascinating thing.
It's nuts.
By the way, this is amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
awesome.
Not to plug your product, but
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I love all the right products. I'm going to get the gut health and the daily greens. I'm leaving on a long trip tomorrow. And I use this one all the time, which I love, the balance of gummies. But these are great, and this new peach flavor is 10 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you know, gut health was our best seller. We had been selling guava, which, to be honest, I love, and I can't decide which one I prefer more, the guava or the peach. But yeah, so the peach iced tea, we are launching today. I guess we will have already launched it by the time we air the podcast. But this and this work very complementarily with one another. So this has probiotics inside it. This has prebiotics inside it.
But you guys really hit this kind of, you know, wellness is having such a moment right now globally. Yes. And I would say wellness in Dubai is having a 2x moment to the global wellness trends.
Yes.
I mean, everyone here cares about it. It's like everyone's walking around in their, you know, yoga pants and sports clothes all day long in the city, which is kind of like, you know, if there was ever a comparison between Dubai and LA, finally you have actually the same sort of kind of a look walking around town, and people really care about it. And you know, everyone's cold plunging and everyone's infrared sauning, and I see like hundreds of friends doing their steps on Kite Beach every single Saturday and Sunday, which is hilarious. But people really care about it here, and so you guys are just in this extraordinary sector, and I think gut health is something that people care so much more about, probably because people are listening to others talk about it. People are watching on YouTube and listening to podcasts, and it's just become much more relevant. But I think the global wellness sector is so on the rise. We're working on a business in that category right now, but I think what you guys have done with Right is just awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more awareness around the subject, particularly gut health. You know, like the importance that gut health has to us in our lives is to such insane degree that it doesn't make any sense to ignore it. But it's just the fact that people quite simply were not aware of it. So just a few points, like gut health to a great degree dictates your mood, your energy levels, your immunity. 2/3 of all your immune cells in the body reside in the gut. So if you don't have a healthy gut, you're not going to be immune at all. 90% of all serotonin that is produced inside the gut. And serotonin is the neurotransmitter for happiness. So if you don't have a healthy gut, you're not going to have you're not going to be feeling happy. And
what a pitch!
Yeah,
selling happiness in a sachet.
Literally, it is happiness in a sachet. We should use that as a tagline. And the wildest point about the gut for me was that we have more neurotransmitters, which are things that process information. We have more neurotransmitters within our gut than we do in both our brain and spinal cord combined.
That's wild.
Exactly. So
you need to reposition your business completely from the actual health benefits and just make it an emotional thing. Like,
but it is.
You just got to tap into like people's desire for joy and for happiness and to feel good, and you just put that all over your box.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping that. Thing is, if we manage to educate people on, gut health, then people naturally will be able to make more informed decisions and then indirectly, buy products that benefit their gut health.
I'm gonna get a big box of both of these.
Will do. I'll get some. It's not too late now, so I'll try get some sent over to you by tonight. If
is that only because we're on the podcast?
No, always.
Well, that's sweet of you. Thank you.
But yeah, so it's supplements in general is something that I personally am very passionate about. I went through quite a horrible experience with a vitamin D and vitamin B12 deficiency that I didn't know I had.
Oh wow.
I was essentially a dysfunctional human being, like genuinely. I was
just like 30% of your energy.
30% of anything.
Of everything.
So
it was just gloomy.
Mental capacity. I would be in the office. I would be far less productive than I usually am. I would just be slow. If I would ever have the energy to go out to a dinner, I'd go home right after because...
I can't imagine you doing that. You're like the most social guy.
Exactly. So I was not my best self or not myself at all. And then it was right at the end of that journey where, finally, after over a year, having done blood tests, I discovered that I have, critically low vitamin D and B12. Having done, a couple months of supplementation, and I was doing a blood test once a month, I was, witnessing my vitamin D and B12 levels go up and up and up. And right at the point that they normalized or got close to normalizing, coincided with the moment that I started, feeling normal again. Because it's not just physical, like mentally at some point, I was wondering, am I gonna be in this state my whole life? Do I have some, neurodegenerative disease? It was horrible. And as I was coming out of that, I obviously realized firsthand how real supplementation was, because I probably went from, very extreme. That's not where many of our customers are. It's a supplement to, already aid you in a healthy, active lifestyle in an ideal scenario. But I realized how real it was. And I was in the process of launching another brand that was health and wellness orientated. Is when, this whole journey began, partnering up with obviously Marcel, my business partner for everything, and Seb and Guillaume, who are the co-founders of Right, who've been doing a phenomenal job. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But
I think, when you're able to enhance your life, your energy levels, your kind of, say, formula, what kind of gets you pumping at the highest kind of octane and energy level, it changes everything. Like, we're all capable of feeling like a superhero.
Yeah.
Like, and we just
but we seldom do.
But you have to build the habits and then you have to create the motivation. And like, there's a lot of content online about like, kind of like, leveling up and stuff like that. And, it's, that wave of content was really kind of in the last 2 years, kind of after I started my business, after you started your business. But I can imagine as a young kind of guy today trying to find kind of some sort of direction, purpose, kind of like, direction of travel, that, the kind of tools are out there to really kind of say today's the day. And for me personally, I mean, I think that, you want to feel like this kind of warrior. And, you want to kind of be in like gladiator mode. To go and be a leader, to be innovative, to be kind of the best version of yourself inside your work, outside of your work, and, feeling good and kind of developing that sort of like mantra and that sort of like habit set it's it. I mean, that's kind of like when you can get that down and you can kind of derive that motivation and kind of make yourself feel like a rock star, there's no greater feeling.
100%.
And it translates quickly. Like it will translate into all these different, categories of your life.
Yeah.
And, it's an amazing thing. And you never really understood what was possible until you kind of implemented that sort of stuff. Often you need a teacher. Like I had one of my closest friends who was actually the first investor in my business. Is super militant sort of guy when it comes to just like thinking about what makes him kind of achieve. And he taught me so much at the beginning. And also one thing that he taught me is like, this idea of like perfection. Like we all kind of still have our issues and our problems, or we all kind of have a day where we, feel tired getting out of it, but it's just kind of the continued push and consistency and just kind of belief and enthusiasm. These are all great things. I think that like people should spend a lot of time thinking about what their superpowers are.
Yeah.
What makes you really different or great or capable. And often we have a lot of overlap, and some things are really specific and unique, and some things come from your past, and some things you can implement today. But, when you think about what makes you tick, and you really take the time to write these things down, and you kind of continually map out your life and be kind of thorough about problem solving for yourself.
Yeah.
It's you uncover an amazing ability to just kind of continue to create more for you.
Definitely.
And it's an extraordinary thing. It's, and it starts with basic stuff.
Definitely. And to be able to be in a position where you can, get the most out of yourself and be asking those questions, you need to have somewhat of a healthy baseline of
100%.
your mental health, physical health.
Oh, and you just gotta be willing to just kind of like listen to what other people suggest you do. Like,
yeah.
And you always have to be, trying to get better. So like for me, like the first thing I do every single morning when I wake up, I go straight from my bed immediately into a cold plunge for 4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, I have one in my house.
Yeah.
But, it's literally like I am up for all but 45 seconds before I'm sitting in, 8-degree water for 4 minutes. And, but I get out of that thing and I'm like, I could go
ready to go
conquer the world. And then I take like 25 supplements in the morning, and you could just feel like the neurons spiking in your brain with every single gulp of a vitamin. And you're just like, oh, now I'm really ready to go. And then I have like a green tea and a coffee, and then I'm like ready to jump out, jump out of an airplane. So, these are all really good things. And that's like good for me. I was having dinner the other night with a guy who had just met that night. But
by the way, quick interjection. Yeah. You said you take 25 supplements in the morning. This might be able to replace that.
Okay, I'm excited. I'm gonna have to do a full review.
One sachet, 26 vitamins and minerals, 12 fruit and vegetable extracts, all 6 essential electrolytes.
Love that.
And 5 grams of pea protein. So wake up in the morning.
It's gonna be added in. We're not eliminating anything. We're just adding more.
But yeah, you were saying.
I was having dinner the other night with a guy named Umar Kamani, who founded Pretty Little Thing.
Yeah.
A really amazing entrepreneur. Like built an extraordinary business. Had extremely successful in that. And he was telling me about his sleep regimen. And like this was unbelievable what he was sharing with me about, oxygen chamber into red light therapy bed, onto magnetic mat, then, magnesium, then NeuroSim, and like, but he's telling me that on his sleep tracker, he's getting like 2.5 hours of deep sleep a night. And that's unheard of. Like I get like an hour and a half a night, and that's like, top percentile.
Oh,
that's
wow.
like very solid. To get like 23% of your sleep is deep sleep. Look at.
So how does he do it?
Just programs his body to do it, and he's like, I'm ready to, jump out of bed in the morning with so much energy, and so there's so much that you can continue to optimize and learn. Yeah. And I was just like, you just got to be a sieve and take it all in,
100%.
and you realize you can incorporate it into all these different facets of life, and it's definitely a marathon, but it's fun and it's cool and.
It is. There's so many things we can do to optimize, like things like sunlight, good sleep, and various things. But again, my final weave back into supplements. The one reason why I love it so much is because there are all these things that we can do to optimize our, lifestyles and our physical and mental health that mostly require time. You have to gym, it takes 1 hour a day. You want to do some reading, it's another hour a day. Or sleep, it's 8 hours a day. Whereas you have something that can take less than a minute out of your day, that you do every day, that can improve the baseline of where you are by 10%, and that's supplements. So I always say, like, people who, I don't know, is eating super unhealthy, sleeping 2 hours a day, not doing anything to boost their mental health, like, you know, working or reading, taking supplements is not going to make you a superhuman, or it's not going to make you someone that's super smart or, you know, well built. But whatever your baseline is, if you're at 50% of your potential, supplements will help you be 60%. If you're, you know, I would like to think like us, trying our best in all aspects of life to try and optimize, where we're at, let's say, 80% or 90%, then supplements will help you go from 90% to 100 or 80% to 90.
100%. I agree with you. I think it's really important to do an audit on your life continuously. And
how so? What do you mean?
You need to think about, like, what's working for me. Like, I'll give you a good example. Like, I mean, supplements are a big, you know, you all continuously should be learning about what are the other things, what are the added kind of
100%.
You know, regimens or specific supplements or your daily greens and gut health, whatever it is that, you know, it's a journey you're learning at the end of the day. So you're adding things, taking things away, et cetera. You're trying to optimize continuously. But what I mean more by audit is partly in that, but it's partly like what makes you work as a human being over the course of a day. So, like, I'll give you an example. For me, if I sleep like 5.5 to 6 hours a night, I feel great. I feel enough energy. And if I sleep, and I can do that for a few nights in a row, and then I need like 7.5 kind of on a catch-up night, et cetera. But the moment I dip, say, below 5, I'm like not myself. And so, and I really try not to do that. And even at 5.5, a few days in a row, I'm like not myself. And so, you know, I think about, say I slept 5 hours last night, what's the first half of my day going to look like? Like, if I'm like have to evaluate the productivity of my first 4 hours of the day in the office, like, am I going to get 4 hours of real work done, or am I going to be kind of like a bit slow, et cetera? And am I only going to get 2 hours of proper work done, or 2.5, because I'm just kind of like pushing myself through the day, pushing myself through meetings, et cetera? Like, I should have just gotten the extra 45 minutes of sleep. I would have felt great. Yeah. And so you continuously need to think about, like, what actually makes it work for you, what allows you to kind of work smart. You know, does that mean like that you should, you know, try to incorporate, you know, 3 days of workout, you know, kind of doing resistance training, because that's just going to make your body feel better over the course of, you know, your week. And you just have to make time for that, et cetera. You just need to look at it as kind of this kind of full 24-hour window. Yeah. Every single day. And how do you live this kind of fun life, balanced life, et cetera, while also just being the most effective version of yourself. Yeah. And, you know, I think that there's a big break in the way that we kind of treat ourselves and our bodies compared to kind of what the perception probably was a while ago of being an entrepreneur, just starting to build a business or just working hard, let's say.
No, definitely.
You know, it used to be kind of like you just have to work all the time and you have to be just kind of wired and you don't sleep and it's just this commitment. And now I think it's turned into much more of like, how do you get, you know, the most out of yourself? Yeah. And what's the best formula for you so that you do the best version of work? And I'm not really a fan of these people that are like, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning and I do 4.5 hours of crazy stuff, and then I start my day. I'm like, that seems like a giant waste of time. Yeah. I kind of want to get to the office pretty quickly after I wake up. But, you know, I think that, you know, yeah, you just kind of develop whatever works for you so that you can get the most out of yourself and feel good.
Definitely, definitely. One thing I wanted to touch on during the podcast was the F&B concepts in HyperSpace. Sure. You know, when I went, the initial opening, the F&B concepts, to me, were pretty incredible. You had these, I mean, you explain it, but from my perspective, I arrive, I go to the stall that I thought was selling, you know, chicken drumsticks and fries, only to find out that the chicken drumsticks were, you know, this vanilla ice cream inside, and the fries were, I don't know, these biscuits. And it's so bizarre when you eat something that looks familiar to something that you know and taste completely different.
So, you know, when we built House of Hype, I think a big part of it was hitting kind of these various senses, but also these categories of like immersive entertainment. Yeah. And so with Aya, it's like you hit certain senses very dramatically. So we really take you down this rabbit hole of a universe and a world, like kind of built on the dark side of the furthest planet in the galaxy. And we're, you know, you're living in a world of moving image and content and music and light shows, and it kind of hits you in your, I always say Aya's like going to, you know, it's like taking a toothbrush to your mind. It just kind of like eases you. It kind of like, you could be really stressed and you walk into Aya and you walk out of Aya and you're like, oh, I feel like kind of at ease. So it hits like kind of 2 or 3 of the primary senses. House of Hype, I was, kind of focused more on trying to hit a bit more like taste, humor, kind of theater, interactivity, both on a digital level and on a physical level. And so it was just kind of like, how can we deliver various formats of an experience? Like, and I call them really like touch points. Mm-hmm. So it's like in Aya, you walk into a room and it's like the touch point is like, you're standing in this beautiful place. That's the touch point, but it takes you very far down that path. In House of Hype, it was like every experience is a touch point, every human interaction is a touch point, everything you eat is a touch point, everything you drink is a touch point, every costume is a touch point, all the retail is touch point, etc. So it was trying to be a bit more unified. A part of the reason we ended up with the F&B also, and my team will kind of laugh at this, there was a point in the summer, kind of say beginning of summer, where Desi, my co-founder, said to me, like, you can't change anything else in the park. Like, you need to stop, like, adjusting these little things. Like, what if we put this here? What if we change the look of that? Or what if we put, screens here? Like, I kept on, I'm kind of, bit of a perfectionist and just kind of a bit nuts when it comes to that. And it's always just like, a man with 100 ideas. And so it's always like, what if we did this? What if we did this? And she's like, we're never going to open up this park if you keep on changing it. I said, fine, okay, I'm going to stop changing it. So I said, what can I change that doesn't affect the actual build?
F&B.
And so I was like, F&B and costumes and immersive theater. So all of a sudden in August, we're like sitting down.
Hyper-focused.
Yeah, we're sitting down with Reef, and I'm like, I want to create a giant F&B experience across the entire park that's like experiential food and beverage. And Reef, who owns Reef Kushiyaki, holy cow, has worked on so many amazing restaurants here. He used to be a chef at Zuma. He's like an amazing creative chef and just a very cool guy that's very much kind of like almost like a character from our world almost. He's like really kind of like his personality is very much the House of Hype personality. And so I said to Reef, like, I have so many ideas around this. Like, how do we kind of action this? And I put together a Pinterest board with maybe 1,500 images that I found all over the internet. A lot of them kind of, Japanese, Korean sort of, patisserie inspired food, and then kind of meets like TikTok food, like things that are very fun and kind of, really translate on socials. And we started developing this concept, and it went all the way, things continually changed. He had one of his chefs in his test kitchen constantly kind of iterating ideas. And, we kept on iterating until about 5 weeks before the park opened. I mean, the hand roll bar concept was supposed to be a dumpling omakase.
And it tasted so good when we
it's amazing. I mean,
opening.
Reef's a great chef. So, Reef did all the creative development and we operated, and basically we source all of the products, are made as kind of as a vendor by him. So you kind of have the seal of approval of a great restaurateur and chef as part of the experience. But I mean, Reef and I came up with that hand roll idea like literally 5 weeks before we opened, because the dumplings just kind of, they weren't really working in terms of transporting and reheating, etc. And I was like, hand rolls is amazing. We go to Kokoro all the time in Al Sarkal. And I was like, no one's done like, outside of that, like there isn't a great hand roll bar. And what a cool idea to say like the best hand roll bar in Dubai is in the back of an amusement park. And that tagline, and I was like, done. We're doing this 100%. And I was like, I hope they taste good. And then I did the tasting, and I was like, done and dusted. Like, this is 100% a thing. And, nothing like validation, like all my friends coming through being like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was phenomenal. And, like, one way to describe House of Hype, in my opinion, which is quite a contrast to Aya, is to me, House of Hype in a positive way is like a sensory overload.
Big
like
time.
you go into one room, there are all these like lights, you feel certain things, like it's just so unusual. And then the food is just the cherry on the cake to that sensory overload experience. But when you walk out of, House of Hype, it's not like you're, uneasy. You still feel, it's not like coming off a roller coaster, where you might feel sick or dizzy. It's like a sensory overload in a way that you're just, fascinated or amazed.
And I think like Aya is probably more the roller coaster, because Aya, although it's very calming, like you really feel like you're on this, it's built in a different world. Versus House of Hype's kind of built on, all the iconography of consumerism. And it's very much built on like internet culture and gaming culture and all these sorts of things. And so for me, actually, a lot of the F&B and immersive theater components and the characters was like built out of a bit of a fear. which is interesting because I was like, House of Hype is very scenographic. It's also very tech-enabled, but a lot of the big spaces, probably half the big spaces, are scenographic zones. They're not like projection mapped or enabled by mega technology, et cetera. So I was like, the room doesn't move. Like, what can we do to, kind of bring someone further down the rabbit hole of the experience? And it was like by taste, by, kind of human interaction and engagement and kind of dealing with our characters and making you feel like you're in this kind of crazy game show at one moment and then you're in this kind of content creator paradise in another one. And all these weird things are happening that don't really work in the real world.
And you've done that in a way in which it works or is an amazing experience for everyone. So what I mean by that is House of Hype. It's an amazing date spot. It's an amazing place to go as a family, to bring your kid. It's an amazing, it's just...
But that's one of the most important things.
Which is difficult to achieve, right? Because if you look at, entertainment or outlets, they're usually places that's specified, specifically for kids or specifically for families or specifically for couples. Whereas, House of Hype and Aya... both are incredible experiences for anyone in any age bracket with any group.
I think that for us, like, when I look at building entertainment attractions in Dubai and globally, but obviously we're in Dubai right now, we're in Riyadh, you're trying to build for the largest portion of the consumer base. And so when you kind of pigeonhole yourself, you're kind of just eliminating people that could potentially want to consume your product. And like the consumers here are enthusiastic and they like seek you out. And 80% of our customers are tourists and 20% are residents. So I have this massive tourist base that's here for 4.8 days on average, and they're looking for things to do actively. And we're like, short to medium format in the middle of the shopping mall is like ideal. It's like you don't have to get in a car and drive 40 minutes to come into House of Hype or to Aya. We're like right in, your kind of encashment zone. We're right in it. And so for us, we really focus on building our products in as broad a format as possible to grab as many of those customers. And so it kind of has to be for everyone. But you can have a very lean forward experience. Like I have one of my best friends in Dubai, his stepkids are obsessed with winning Travis Scott sneakers. And so they have been like 4 times now and they keep on earning Hypercoin. I think one of them's on the leaderboard right now. And it's like an obsession. He wants to go back and he wants to play in the app and get more points and get more points and get more points to win these sneakers. And that's very lean forward. And then you have other customers like my dad were to walk through and he's just kind of wide-eyed with his head up, looking at me like, what world am I in?
Yeah.
And he's not really snapping pictures. He's just kind of like
taking it all in.
It's like just a sensory overload. And so we deliver within the same product kind of this very different experience for various people.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes House of Hype and Aya so special. But yeah, Alex, thank you so much for coming onto this podcast. I think we're out of time. First of many, I hope.
Well, I was honored to be the first guest. This is such a treat. Yeah, congratulations on the start. I'm sure like most everything you do, it'll be a great success.
Inshallah, as they say. Inshallah.
You got it.